Cautionary statement that I wish I didn't have to make, but we will maintain decorum tonight, and negative disruptions will not be. Beth, do you need something from me? Oh, Beth is pointing at a seat. Thank you, Beth. Negative disruptions will not be tolerated, and those persons, if any, will be asked to leave. Our land acknowledgement is this. We at Indivisible Bellingham acknowledge that this beautiful place in which we live, Whatcom County, is the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Lummi and Nooksack peoples, the original inhabitants of this land who are still here and who continue to honor and bring to light their ancient heritage. We humbly offer this land acknowledgement with gratefulness for their enduring care of our shared lands and waters. May we honor our relation and nurture our relationship with our Coast Salish neighbors as we shoulder our shared responsibilities to their homelands where we all reside today. And for those of you not familiar with Indivisible, we are unified by the principles of fairness, inclusion, tolerance, and a just society for all through nonviolent civil engagement, political involvement, and consistent pressure on elected officials. We've been organizing and supporting numerous actions since our inception after the election in 2016. And as a group, you've heard us say this, we still strongly believe Joan Baez's statement of action is the antidote to despair. And is that ever important now? The work that we do requires some funding. We welcome any help to defray the costs of our activism. We're an all-volunteer group, nonprofit group, and we get by through the goodwill and generosity of our members. We have rent for timely. Was that karmic? We have rent for this meeting space, costs for our website, our email blast system, an occasional ad in the paper, printing costs, even occasional security needs for public events. That was a weird thing to have to own up to. We appreciate anything you can give. We have a couple of buckets going around, plus you can make a donation on PayPal or Venmo by searching our sites for us. A couple of announcements. So we're having this meeting tonight. The next one, a month from now, will be about ways that residents of Bellingham and Whatcom County can legally support the needs of our refugee and immigrant communities. Speakers will include immigration attorneys Hannah Stone and Holly Pye, and Kathy Kuba, who is a member of our Indivisible leadership team. So that, again, that'll be right here. And also, if you're interested in joining Indivisible, you can look on our website, or Karen Hoffman, who's now waving in the back. She can take care of your needs at the back at the end of this. So tonight our focus is on our Bellingham Public Schools. Okay, so our focus is on our Bellingham Public Schools and how it's handling two huge challenges. Our superintendent, Dr. Greg Baker, will address those challenges. The first one being the budgetary constraints that they're under and what might happen if things get worse for our children, our families, our staff, and the community. And secondly, how the district is responding to serving marginalized students and family groups that are coming under increased political threats, gender issues, language issues, homelessness issues, refugee immigrant issues, etc. So we're very appreciative of that. I worked in public education for about 40 years, including a stint as the Bellingham Special Ed Director. That was decades ago, and also the Ferndale Special Services Director. And I was always involved in social issues in whatever roles I had. But nothing in my years working in schools comes close to the kind of scrutiny and pressure that our public school educators are facing now. In my mind, these folks are heroes, pure and simple. I wish that wasn't the case, but I think it is. Most of you are aware, and Dr. Baker distributed these. I just want to mention this the Bellingham Promise, a short written pledge made by the district to our community. In the olden days, when we mainly got along and people talked through differences, the wording was important. Now the wording in this document is critical. So I urge, if you don't know it, please take a careful review of it. I finally want to say, to end, something I said at our November meeting. We're exhausted. We're tired. We've had lots of difficult conversations with family, with friends. Some of our hearts are broken. Had the election gone differently, it would have made the exhaustion worth it. We have to, right now, right here, thank every person in this room for what's been done these last months and what's continuing to be done and what will be done to restore our democracy. So Dr. Baker, if you would come up. Dr. Baker has served as our superintendent for 15 years. That's a really long time. I don't want to say that you're a dinosaur, but do you have any idea what the average lifespan of a superintendent is? Anyone know? 5. Okay, it's 3 to 5. So Dr. Baker, he will introduce himself. After his discussion, there'll be a Q&A time. Okay, so Dr. Greg Baker, Bellingham Public Schools.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation to be here and for spending your Monday evening here. I appreciate the opportunity to engage with you. I hope that it's worth your time. There's quite the eclectic group in here, and I have been here for 15 years, so I know quite a few folks in here, and some are former parents in our district. I see former school board members. I see former deans of education. I see former superintendents. I see somebody who I first met 33 years ago, my first time in Bellingham, as a graduate student. It was my sailing coach. Jeff in the back was one of the first people I ever met here, and really helped me learn the passion of sailing and of Bellingham. And as I left Bellingham to go do adventures, I ended up back here with my family and 3 kids, and it's been a great place to raise my children and to serve as your superintendent. I know many of you, but not all of you. How many of you are former students of the Bellingham Public Schools? How many of you have had kids or grandkids in the Bellingham Public Schools? Okay, that's a theme. So the theme tonight around how do we navigate challenging times as a school district, part of that answer is what just happened here, is that people are vested in their schools in this community. They care about education. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time comparing ourselves to other places, but I can tell you that this is a pretty special place. And if you've lived in other places, maybe you can compare. If you've lived here your whole time, maybe it's you just think this is normal, but it's not. This is a pretty unique place, and that's partly what's kept me here for 15 years as a superintendent. So what I'm going to share with you tonight is not just really focused on these last 2 months, the political landscape that's changed. It's more of things that are in place in this community, in this school district, that have got us this far, and I'm confident will keep us going. And I'm going to share with you some of the stories and pieces. And some of these stories, many of you will know. Some of you are part of the stories. These were the guiding questions that I was given, and you saw those on the front piece as well. So as a district, given how polarized, how are we working to support all of our kids, especially marginalized communities? And then budget, and I'm going to talk about the budget maybe more towards the end and go a little bit, but really then see where your questions are. So tonight, another way to frame this is I'm going to frame the Bellingham Promise and the work over the past really 15 years, talk a little bit about the school funding and the national context. How many of you before tonight have seen the Bellingham Promise in some sort? Okay. If you have, so some of you, this is your first time. I'm going to play a short video that gives a little bit of the history and the context about the promise. And I want to emphasize this because, as was alluded to, part of what will get us as a district through tough times, whether that was COVID, whether that's budget challenges, whatever it is because we have a strategic plan, the promise, that grounds us in a way that is pretty spectacular, and it has gotten us through challenging times. So let's just hear a little bit about the promise.
Bellingham Promise Market.
Bellingham Promise really lays out the beliefs of the district and the beliefs that all the teachers have about the students we teach, the community we teach, the families we teach.
Common language, something that can be accessed from kindergartners up to retirees and community members, not just educators.
It gives us a roadmap for being able to say, hey, this is what we think is important as a district.
It's that touch point to where we can always reflect our practices and how the kids are feeling back to the promise.
I love that the promise really says it's not just about the academics, which is important, it's also about who our students become as people.
To set any student up for success, it's important to make them feel like they are loved and they are cared about.
The Bellingham Promise is our strategic plan, so it really drives everything that we do.
But it is not your traditional strategic plan. You know, it's not the 3-ring binder that then goes on the shelf and you pull it out every 3 years and ask yourself, how are we doing? It's just on one page.
At the time, that was a big thing to say we're going to promise to do something.
There was a lot of discomfort around the wording.
Children should be loved. And that terminology was a little controversial.
Interestingly, this year at Bellingham High School, the ASB went to camp over the summer and they came back and they said, we want our theme at Bellingham High School this year to be Love BHS. So it was really interesting to see that come all the way back around and have the kids themselves come up with like, we want this place to be about love.
They're like, good morning, how are you today? Saying, and then it just makes me feel good. I like how it says the whole child is important because like it means not only like how their education is going, but also how they're feeling mentally and physically. Our fitness and our health and a bunch of other stuff like that. It's not just getting us smarter.
Any little interaction I can have, sometimes I have volunteers that help me out. I just try to, how's your day going? Every one of them has potential, someday. They have a natural skill that I hope they will develop, find out what it is and develop it and use it to the fullest.
When you're asking them to do high levels of learning, they know that even if it's hard, my teacher loves me, and so she wouldn't give me anything that they didn't believe that I could do.
They're not just like, oh, here I am, here to teach this class, teach, I'm out. She actually cares about us.
Staff members really care, when they're talking to you, they're really listening.
There has been woven into the promise a part called key strategies. It's not just here are the outcomes, but here are what our priorities are going to be. Things like a one schoolhouse approach. We don't treat one school better than the other, and if a school needs a certain thing that they don't have, we're going to see that they get it. And that's an amazing strategy because you don't have rich schools and poor schools.
I see us right in the middle center when you see great teaching with strong support, that all of operations is that strong support. Buses get kids to school, food services every single solitary day. The capital team does a great job of building beautiful schools and buildings for our students. And the facilities team, of course, maintains our environments.
It's not the custodians and the maintenance crew separate with the teachers. We're all one team.
We all are a part of that promise.
It's not the same as it started out to be. It's close, but it's had really important modifications.
We added a 6 key strategy to highlight our work around equity and diversity and inclusion.
How do we bring more members that reflect our community into our organization and how that ultimately impacts the students that are in the schools.
We've been working hard on inclusionary practices and how to better ensure all kids have access to their general education classes.
If you walked into my classroom, you would not know who is in a program like Life Skills or who is being served with an IEP. You would just see 30 kids doing math. There is racial diversity, gender representation diversity, there's economic diversity.
All of my children, from those that are into orchestra, to those that are runners, to soccer players, to culinary students, the promise is supporting all of those efforts.
We can learn about the world, like we can be scientists, mathematicians, readers and writers, multilingual, problem solvers,
Confident individuals who continuously challenge themselves,
Historians and global thinkers. Team player.
healthy, active individuals.
It's nice to know that we have something in place that everyone, not just staff,
that also students can look on that show our like beliefs and what we're trying to do to make our community better.
So I want to just a couple comments here. This I'm going to show our school board here. And Dr. Gass, I see you in the room. Who would have imagined 15 years ago you would have done something that's lasting today? So not just me, but you were the school board president when I was hired, and served on our school board as we created the Bellingham Promise. And I hope that you are proud of the work that you and so many have done that has guided us for so many years. So thank you for your leadership. So the promise, to talk one about the promise, has been a guiding document that has just guided us through so many hard things. And there's a lot of incredible words in that document that have great impact for us. You heard the reference to the word love, that actually caused tension when we first were creating this. And we spent really almost a year and a half creating the first Bellingham Promise, because we spent a lot of time engaging the community, the staff, the kids in the development of it. So it was deep, and we cared about every single word. That the word love was challenging, but it became our first core value after we worked through it. The word promise was challenging. I had staff saying, "You're going to make me promise to deliver on this. That seems pretty hard." And we had to help frame that this was aspirational. It may not be that we achieve it completely ever, but it's going to push us. And you'll see amazing words in there. It's kind of, I'll come back to this maybe towards the end with the federal impact, but the fact that that 6 key strategy, equity, diversity, inclusion, that we have been so proud of, is now such a political lightning rod. It's sad. It makes me sad. I wrote a letter out to the community last Friday that you might have read that talked about that. Those are such powerful words to us, and such powerful words in education, the history of education around equity and diversity and inclusion. I got a letter from the Department of Education Friday night, and some of you have been watching the news, that was to me and was pretty threatening. And I now got to figure out what I'm going to do with that. I'll share some tonight what I think, and it's going to keep evolving, but I can tell you at the moment I'm not going to change a darn word on that thing, because it's really all about. Now, I forgot this is Kate. But I've told our team we're going to be smart, and we're going to monitor what happens, and we're going to stay focused on our work. And then we'll adjust as needed. If threats turn into other things, we'll go as we need to. But I can just tell you right tonight where my heart is and my soul is. The Bellingham Promise for us transcends any political movement or any political state. That was built by this community and this staff and these kids on the direction that we value in this community. So, the promises you saw in the video has changed through the years, and it will continue to change. But those words are pretty deep to us. So the promise, when I talk about our district, I can't overstate how important it is. There's not a day that goes by that it does not come up in my world. And that's anything from, we have to make a hard decision, how do we put that up against the promise? I get people who are angry at me will use the promise. Like 2 weeks ago with snow, I had a kid using the promise to say, the promise says this, and you're not doing that. So people use it all the time because they know it has such value to our organization. Another key piece to our school district, I believe, is the quality of the school board that this community elects and oversees the school district. And I can't overstate that. Dr. Gass is here in the room right now. Some of you know these outstanding board members. None of them were on the board when I came, so we've had a full turnover of the board. And we have outstanding school board members. I have colleagues all over the country that don't last. You heard the 3 to 5 years. One of the reasons is because you have a school board that's not functional and That's not the case here in Bellingham. We've been fortunate that we have a board. I talked about, when people ask me about school boards, that there's three kind of folks that run for school board. And I'm not going to judge them, but I'm going to tell you what I like. Like I said, I didn't judge it. One kind of board member can be a board member who has an issue, right? There's something that they want to run on and change, gosh darn it. So that's one kind. Another kind, especially in bigger cities, can be someone running for political office, and it's a stepping stone. It's a good way to start off a political career. The third kind is a board member who cares about their community and wants to serve. And that's what we've had the fortune of having in this district, is that third kind. Not that the other two can't serve their roles, but really dedicated folks that care deeply about the school district. They care about the superintendent. They care about the staff. They care about the success. And I can just let you know that's not the same everywhere. And maybe you've probably seen it. Like, school boards can really make a place challenging, but we have just amazing leaders in this district. So a couple things, and you won't, maybe can't read all those words, but this is something that guided us, especially through the first part of my time here, was how do you help get all kids opportunity and with scarce resources? On the far left is showing 3 different students and the concept of equality. If everybody gets the same amount of resource, they're standing on boxes that say state money. So it's kind of like if we just spread the money equally. But kids come in different places, and so they have different challenges. So one of the ways you do equity is you take from one and give to the other. That's that second. You take from one place and give to another. Sometimes you have to do that, especially when resources get tight. But the next best way is to get more resources. So that third one shows more boxes, and that's where we have state money. That's where we pass our local levies. We live in a community that supports our levies and bonds. That's where you get a foundation to support on top of that. That's where you try to get the resources that you need. The fourth one is aspirational, that take down the walls and the barriers and the fences and let every student flourish. So that's just a guiding piece that pushes us to try to figure out how to shift resources where needed. This is a story that was pretty powerful, that really showed the promise in action and really impacted the whole state. During my first year, I spent a full day in every school in the district. We have, how many schools do we have? Anyone know? How many high schools? 4 high schools. Don't forget options. 4 middle schools, 14 elementary schools, and 2 special programs. So 22 schools plus 2 special, 24 total. And I won't go deep on this story, but one of the things that we did beginning was, and some of you had kids at the time, kindergarten was only half-time, part-time in our state. And we knew all the importance of early childhood education. It's called out in the promise. When I was hired, we had 2 pediatricians on our school board. Like, I didn't have to work very hard to convince this community of early childhood. Well, we funded full day K using our local levy before the rest of the state funded it. And we had full day K for all kids, regardless of where they went. This was the young girl that changed, symbolizes the young girl that changed the world, because it was in a school. It was actually at Sunnyland Elementary School, where I went and spent the day, and I was in a classroom where a teacher was one-on-one with a young lady who could only be in kindergarten half-time, because that's what we offered most kids. Some kids got full day because they could afford to pay for it. Those students that couldn't afford it got it half day. And this young girl was kindergarten age, and she couldn't read or write. She didn't know numbers, couldn't name any numbers or letters. And how many of you have heard this story? Okay, I'm going to make this a good one. So I talked to this teacher, and I was like, this girl. The teacher said, this girl is behind. Like, she's come into kindergarten. She didn't have early childhood experience before that. Doesn't know her numbers. Doesn't know her letters. How are we going to get her caught up? And she only comes every other day. And at that time, we had a Monday, Wednesday, and a Tuesday, Thursday, and every other Friday as you chose that program. I said, well, why don't we have the student come both sessions, come every day? And the teacher looked at me and said, we can't do that. And I said, well, we can't, huh? She goes, no. I go, yeah. I go, why not? And I said, well, do you think it would be a good idea? And the teacher said, yeah. I said, I do too. I said, so you think it's a good idea, I think it's a good idea, and I'm the superintendent. Maybe we just try it. So she said, okay. So that's what started. All of a sudden, we moved all of our title schools, high poverty schools, mid-year. All those kids got full day K for the whole second half of the year, set the stage for the entire district the very next year. I say that as an example of that's the kind of thing that this district, not just me, but this district does, is we follow the research, we look for the kids that are farthest from justice, and we push ourselves to figure out what to do. This was the second big one that we did, Promise K. And this one was pretty powerful. This was after we got full day K for everybody. We started looking, if on the Promise it says early childhood education, we define as prenatal through 3rd grade. Now, we often don't think of education we think of it as K-12. But if we as the school district don't think about kids until they're kindergarten, we will never achieve what we want at the outcome. We have to look at that prenatal through 3rd grade, even if we don't have them the whole time or they're not fully our responsibility. Well, once we had everyone in full day K, it was, okay, what about the kids before kindergarten, that early childhood? Some kids had private preschool. Some kids were at home in a very enriched environment. Some kids, though, were left home alone, and their parents were doing the best they could. So we had this huge variability. So we said, what would it take to get those a kindergartner to come for longer than a year? And I say that doesn't maybe sound so unique, but it was to the system. It was like, no, you can't start kindergarten until you're turn 5 by September 1st, whatever that cutoff is. And you can't have kindergarten go longer. And this is where my experience, not as an early childhood person, but as a high school person, came into play. I was a principal of a high school like Options, kids that were at the end of the system and were struggling. And so I'd spent my career thus far at that point figuring out kids that were 15 to 19 struggling, how to help them. And can you have more than 4 years of high school in the state? Yeah, 5th year senior, right? You can have a 6-year senior. You can go all the way to year 21. And so that was my experience. If a kid was struggling, have them longer their senior year. Well, we just flipped it and said, well, why don't we start early instead of wait till they're 12th graders? Well, everybody said it couldn't be done. And I called OSPI, the state superintendent's office, and I went down there and I said, hey, let's start this group of kids that if they don't have any access to early childhood education, if we haven't figured out how to help them, they come in behind, let's start in the year before and just extend kindergarten out. We'll call it, for us, Promise Kindergarten. So they wrestled with it, and guess what the state told us? No, well, this is another example of what we do to serve all kids is we decided, and we have the best lawyer in the state. We got the best lawyer in the state, and we did a legal analysis, and I had him write me up a legal brief, and we determined that we thought if we ended up going to court that we would win, that the law would allow us to serve this group of kids earlier. So what we did is we did it. And for the first 4 or 5 years, I figured the worst thing that would happen was we'd have to pay the money back to the state because we were charging them as kindergartners, right? So the state would give us money. We also used our local levy. But I thought the worst case is we'd have to pay back. So every year we saved a little bit of money in case we had to pay it back. After year 5, we decided we were in the clear, good to go. So we did it and then I got called down to the state by the new state superintendent a few years ago, maybe 3 or 4, and he said, tell me what you're doing here, this Promise K thing. It sounds kind of interesting. And he had me sit with his cabinet in Olympia, and I shared. I said, I came down here before, I asked, I was told no, we did it anyways, this is what we're doing, here's the results. And he said, that is amazing. We're going to change our point of view, and we're not going to not only say you can do it, but we are going to endorse it for the entire state. And now the entire state, it's called Transitional K, has embraced it across the state. So again, examples of things that make an impact that can be going up against authority, kind of, making a connection. Another thing, and I'm not going to go deep on this, but we started tackling, we found, it became clear to me, and as a superintendent, and then with 3 kids in the district, We were asking kids and families to pay all the time. So it wasn't a free and appropriate education. It was, if you got resources, you get this. If you don't have resources, you're going to get this. And that's not okay. So we called it Project Free Education, and we started tackling and taking off things that cost money. That was full day K, school supplies. This was a hard one for some families because they grew up. It was like a rite of passage to take your kids to the store and buy school supplies. Well, we did a whole analysis. It was our homeless coordinators that did it. And they priced out the school supply list for every classroom, every school at 3 different stores in our city, and then mapped it out, and it ranged. One school supply list cost $18 at one school, cost $260 in another. And there was a direct correlation of the higher the poverty to the school, the higher the school supply list. That school didn't have as much PTA support, didn't have as much need, and so we took that away, and that should be a responsibility, if not by the state, which is where it should be, then by our local levy, is we are going to ensure kids have what they need when they come into our classrooms. We had courses that cost money. If you wanted to take an art class, it was $20 or $10. If you wanted to take a science lab. Traffic safety, this is a big one, and this one has some energy right now around it. How many of you took traffic safety when you were in school? Guess how many districts currently have it in schools in our state? How many districts have it in the state of Washington right now, traffic safety free for kids in the school? That'd be one, Bellingham. So we brought this back. It went away with funding, and we said, and it was a barrier. It's $600, $550, $600 to take it. So we're putting kids out. Either they don't get a license or they're going to drive without instruction license. We said this is an equity issue. So we put this back in our curriculum. It costs money because of after-school driving, and so we got to keep figuring that out. When budgets are tight, people start looking at this list, and so we have to keep examining how we do it. But right now, every kid in the district can take traffic safety, get their license, and save their family $600. You can see a couple others. Graduation. It used to be that if you wanted to graduate, you'd have to pay a fee for your robe and your gown and to be cleaned. To participate in athletics and activities, costs all over the place. Yearbooks. We'd have kids that would sit there the last day of school. Those that could afford it would have a yearbook. Those that couldn't sat there. Or their teacher would try to get money to do it, right? So take away that and have it be universal. That causes some tension. So a year ago we put it back to, I think instead of $60, it was $10 if you could afford it. So there's this tension with all of this around. It's not everyone totally agrees with this, but I think the general principle you can get is if you come to public schools, you should have access to it. You shouldn't have to be writing a check every week. This is just a boom. These are some of the other things in Project Free Education, just to give you a sense of the size of this. So I won't go much deeper on that, but you get my point. It costs a lot of money to go to public schools, and we've been trying to reduce that. What we want is for the community to ensure that we have a free and appropriate education for our kids, not nickel and dime kids and parents all week long. All right. You guys with me? Okay. All right. These are some signs that we have built, some with partners, some ourselves, through the years, and you'll see in all of our schools. And they each have stories, and I won't go deep, but these are like the Dreamers and LGBTQ are populations that was clear that those folks weren't feeling welcome all the time in our community, in our schools. And so we did a variety of things. One was put up welcoming signs throughout our district, so you'll see those. This was something I did, especially before COVID, the first 10 years, and I've done it some since, but the concept of walking in the shoes of people in our district. I walked in the shoes of a student in preschool, kindergarten, first grade, all the way up to graduation, so 14 years where I spent a full day with a classroom each grade level. And then I spent walking in the shoes a full day with different types of people. The youngster on the left was a student experiencing homelessness. And I spent the day with him at Birchwood Elementary. He's now a freshman in high school. His mom has gone from being experiencing homelessness to working for our district as a family liaison and doing amazing work supporting families throughout our district. The student on the right was a student that identified as LGBTQ. I spent the day with them at Squalicum High School. And when I would do a day, I would then write up a story, sometimes we'd film it, and put it out to our staff and community, and just tell their story. And again, trying to bring to light maybe stories that not everybody knew, or people, the kind of people that maybe they didn't necessarily know. As a school district, we're certainly learners, so staff, each year, different variations, we have different books that we read. These are through the years. Sometimes community would find out what we were reading, and they would start doing book clubs. So different books that would push us in our thinking, and you can just kind of get a sense with some of those there. Our Whatcom Youth Pride Parade, we're a sponsor of that. If you haven't been to one of those, it happens every spring. We do it out of Bellingham High School as the hub. Big parade, tons of community partners, and again, a celebration of part of our community that often is not valued as they should be. Couple more slides here on this. I'm going to just talk facilities for a minute. I'm not going to talk very long, but facilities matter. The type of building and classroom that we put our kids and our teachers and our parents matters. Now, I'll always come down on the side of I'd rather have an outstanding teacher in a not great facility than a not great teacher in a nice facility. But what's really great is when you get a great teacher in a great facility that's conducive to learning. And I'll just tell one story, maybe why this is so important to me. When I was a principal at a school similar to Options, the alternative type schools usually get the oldest of the old, the used of the used. And that was the case when I was a principal. We had the old middle school that the new middle school was built. That's where the middle school, they gave us this old building. And it was a high school, and our weight room was in the old boys' bathroom with broken urinals. And it had the old weights from the new high school. And so I'm the principal of this school, and that's the message that these kids were getting was that. And maybe this is, maybe there's a theme to this, I don't know. So a quick story is I called up, before I became a principal, I had the fortune to work in the district office, which isn't very common. So I was in my 20s and was a district office administrator. And I had a mentor tell me, and I was moving kind of up through the district office, she said, you need to go back into a building, you need to become a principal. So I did, but I had years of experience with relationship building in the district office. And district office often gets the, those people, it's not the case. There are great people that work in the district office, and I learned that. So when I became the principal, I called up 3 of my bosses. It was a director, assistant soup, deputy soup, not the soup, he scared me, but the other 3, and I said, can I pick you up from the district office and give me 1 hour of your time? I think it was like at 4 o'clock, and they said sure. I built trust, so I picked them up. I didn't tell them why, and we went and visited 3 schools. We went to 2 other high schools, and we went into their fitness center, their weight rooms. And then I took them to my high school, and I took them in the boys' bathroom. And that's all I had to do. And now I had 3 champions that were going to help me at least try to redo this boys' bathroom fitness center. I never got to the dream of the whole building. But after I left that district and I went on a journey to get my doctorate and go work in other districts, and I landed in Bellingham, guess what I found in Bellingham? I found that same school, Options High School, 7 portables out behind Bellingham High School. Now, dedicated staff working there, people that cared about them, but big picture, it just fit the mold of almost everywhere else is that kind of school, got that kind of facility. So as much as facilities isn't the most important thing, and I certainly, have gotten criticized like building great facilities, it's deep in me that facilities matter, that kids, they can read what you're messaging about, how you feel about them based upon the kind of environment they're in. So when I first got here, we had encountered Whatcom had just burned down. So we were rebuilding Whatcom. The left was a little bit later, Shuckson with a new gym addition. This was Options High School, so some of you maybe remember this. So that's out behind Bellingham High School, 7 portables. And we put together a bond in 2013 that was aggressive, and it included a new options high school. And that's what it turned out to be. And if you haven't been in there yet, you should come visit. Those kids, they have an outstanding facility. They have an aerospace manufacturing program in there. They have an early learning center in there that's now we have at 3 of our high schools. They have an art room. They have music. They have real bathrooms. They have a fitness center. They have a gym. This is probably one of the things I'm most proud of in my time here, was supporting this. What's interesting is on that same bond, that seems like a long time ago, 2012-13, was dollars for a new district office. Now, did we build that new district office back in 2012-13? No. Heck no. Because we spent time and we took care of our schools first. You'll see Lowell Elementary, you'll see Cordata, you'll see Happy Valley, you'll see Birchwood, you'll see Parkview, you'll see Sunnyland, you'll see Alderwood. We have gone school by school of the highest need first to ensure that they have outstanding facilities. At our high schools, we have state-of-the-art facilities for our athletics and our activities and for our community to use. We've built playgrounds that are inclusive in nature so that kids with different mobility challenges can all access. And then this last year, after a big flood in our building of 100 plus years old, survived through 2 pandemics, the old Roeder building, we were able to open a new district office. My point is we waited for a decade and a half to do that, walk the talk first of our kids, and then it does mean something for the staff and the community that work here, that we care about them as well. We have an early learning center there. We have a professional learning center there. It's open to the community to use, and that can be a really challenging topic in a community, especially when budgets are tight, but I'm also very proud of this work, that this community has supported us in this school district in so many ways. Last one on facilities. Another interesting group are community transitions. These are students with disabilities. In our country and state, they can be served up till 21, now actually till they turn 22. So they go through our system through high school, and then we provide support from 18 to 22 students with disabilities. We've always been searching for where those students can learn from. We had them out in the portables actually with Options High School for a number of years. We then brought them into Bellingham High School where they've been for a decade plus, which was okay. This year in partnership, and last year with WECU, they're over in the Birchwood neighborhood at the old WECU Bank. But the gold standard is that we get a place on a college campus where those kids 18 to 22 can be with like peers. We spent a decade and a half since I've been here, and before that, trying to find a higher ed partner where we could find a place for them. It was impossible until just a couple years ago, and I give huge kudos to Whatcom Community College and to Kathy, and they have found a site that we're going to do a partnership where they're going to provide the land, we're going to build a building, and we'll have our 18 to 21-year-olds with disabilities on campus with peers getting an education out there. This is a schematic of what that building will look like. We'll start construction here within a year, and we'll open up within 2 years. Want to just mention at the high school level, if you have had high school kids, we've done a lot of work to expand opportunity for kids. When I got here, we had what many of us had in high school is a 6-period day, which can be okay, but then the state raised graduation requirements, and there was an equity issue that kids couldn't fit all the classes they wanted, so some would come 0 hour, but only kids that could get there on their own. So we have expanded to what's called a 4 classes every other day, so 8 classes each semester, which has expanded the opportunity for kids to take all types of classes. What question I've gotten since I've been here is like vocational ed type classes. We've been able to expand called career technical education classes, visual performing arts, culinary, world language. It's just a robust variety of courses for kids to take. This just happened the other night. This is another example of us looking at inequities, a marginalized community, someone that doesn't have the same. And I'm going with the athletic theme. To play high school athletics, you have to have a sports physical. To have a sports physical, you have to have a doctor, and you got to be able to access it. That can be a real barrier. So this is a picture inside of our district office. We partnered with medical providers and opened it up for any family that wanted to come in and get their kid a physical and get that checked off. They could just come in and take care of that at our district office. And you know, another theme of all this is partnership and community partnership, and a lot of partners are here in this room. The school district, and with the Bellingham Promise articulates it, we can't do it alone. You know, it's not solely we shouldn't have to do it alone, but we often are looked upon to deliver a lot of services. But we partner, and we have scarce resources. We're always partnering. So whether that's sports physicals, whether that's food, and then like during the pandemic, right? That was a time where we just shifted and we were delivering food to people's houses. So my point is partnerships matter, and this district and community are filled with amazing partners. This just opened last week. Dr. Gass would love to come have you take a tour. This is the health center at Options High School. It's the first one, and it's like a medical clinic. And working with community partners, we'll be able to provide medical support, both physical health as well as mental health, to kids at Options, to all of our high school kids, the district, and a lot of community partnerships, a lot of grants that have helped make this possible. A comment or two about, you'll see a theme here of athletics, but the other theme really that I want to call out is in that EDI phrase, the inclusion part. We've worked really hard, especially the last few years, last 4 or 5 years, around inclusivity. And how do you ensure that all kids feel a sense of belonging, including, in this case, students with disabilities? How many of you have ever been to a unified sporting event? Okay, a number of you. Put it on your list if you haven't. Find out what it is and go to one. It's an example where our kids that have disabilities are on an equal footing with team members with other kids in the high school and middle school and play different sports. This happens to be a basketball game. It's the most joyful thing that we do in our district, and it's just a beautiful thing to see kids with different disabilities all part of an equal team. A couple other examples of things we've done on the edge in tough times. This was, we've both during COVID and during cold weather, but this is Bellingham High School where we were, you guys remember the COVID time? Yeah. So 2020, when we shut down and tried to teach remotely, we had these buildings. And one of the things that we did is we opened up Bellingham High School for our homeless population to come in and use our facility. Now it seems like a pretty good thing to do, but I remember taking some heat from that. Not so much in this community, but I remember being on the radio in Seattle and they were coming after me of like, what are you doing? And like, well, dude, look, you got people that need help. Anyways, so we served food, we worked with partners, we created shelter. So it's another example of what the district can do to help not just kids, but our broader community. All right, I'm going to move into some budget and then we'll get into some questions here. So budget. This group knows this is not a Bellingham challenge, right? This is everywhere challenge. Budget is tough. And it's not just, these are all school districts from around the state. These are showing the city, the county, and the district. So it's affecting pretty much all organizations. This was Governor Inslee, right before he was leaving, talking about the budget's challenge. So in my 15 years here, we've had budget challenges before. We went through a tough part of this 2 years ago. When I first got here in 2010, we were coming out of the Great Recession. So it's kind of a cyclical thing, but it doesn't make it easy. And it seems like as we've gone through these tough ones, we've used all the tricks we can use, and now it's harder to figure out than it ever has been. One of the solutions, or one of the pieces of context that I just want to mention that has been shared by our state superintendent, is to fix this budget piece. Like there's different ways to address the budget deficit, right? One is you raise revenue, the other is you cut expenditures. And the reality is you're probably trying to do both at the same time. A piece of contextual context for our state is we, as a state, send money to the federal government through taxes. We get back $22 million less than we send. In other words, we subsidize other states. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm not the governor, I'm not the legislature, I don't decide that, but that's just a piece of information. And as our state superintendent said, if you say there's not enough funding to fund public schools in our state, you just need to make sure you know that we're sending out $22 billion to other places more than we're getting back. Maybe it needs to be adjusted, I don't know. But it's just an important fact to know that we subsidize, those are my words, other places. Here's another piece of information. This is the percentage of our state's budget that goes to K-12. It used to be above 50%, and it's been going on a downward trend. The Governor Inslee's budget proposal would take us down to about 41% of the state budget going to public education. The new governor coming in has said he would like to reverse that and get it back up over 50%. So that would be a positive if that's where it goes. This is an example of just one of the challenges. This is the cost. This is our district real dollars for insurance and insurance costs. You can see the orange line is what the state reimburses us locally for insurance and utilities. So you can see back in 2018, it cost us $3.7 million. The state gave us about that, but you can see over the next 6 years, costs have gone up, but the reimbursement hasn't. So that's an example of one of the challenges we're facing is costs have gone up, but the money from the state has not. I mean, that's really part of the basics of it. Inflation, that's an indication of inflation, and inflation has just gone up. A guess was that if we just kept up with inflation, it'd be about 1,000 more per student. For us, that'd be about 11 million. Our budget challenge right now is about 15 million. So you can see that inflation really is the big kicker here. One of the things that I often will hear from legislators is that the state actual dollars has gone up in our state to public education. So the percentage has gone down, but the actual number of dollars, and it's true. If you look over here, this is the state amount of state money to K-12 for the whole state. You can see it's almost doubled in 10 plus years. But when you factor in inflation, it flattens out. And when you take the overall amount of money the state gives to education in our state divided by the number of the kids, that's these orange numbers, that's your per pupil funding. It peaked up at $12,000 in 18, and it's been slowly going down. So again, total dollars has gone up, but when you account for inflation and the number of kids, we're losing ground. This is just another example. This is statewide. I showed you the insurance. It just shows you some of the other costs that have gone up. It's similar to your businesses or your households. Things just cost more. I'm not going to go deep on this, but if you want to learn more on our website, we have information. And these are just some local numbers of how much the state is behind in funding our district. Special education is a big one. That's what you're going to hear the legislature talk the most about with education right now for the state is they acknowledge that they are not fully funding special education. MSOCs is the next one, material supplies and operating costs or other costs, transportation. And then there's some other factors in there. If they could fix, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of these, it would be really helpful. Our school board is actively engaged with the budget. As I mentioned, we have a great board. They wrote a letter to the legislators articulating our challenge. So some of the things that we're doing right now with budget, one is we look for attrition opportunities. So if someone resigns or retires mid-year, we work hard to see if we can not fill that position right now. Whenever you go through budget challenges, you start with administration, so we'll do the same thing. That's where always people want to start, and we will, but you can only do so much of that. You still have to run a school district. We have great labor partners in our community. We continue to work with them on different ideas. Inevitably, if the state doesn't come through, we have to pull back on services. We're looking at some creative things that we might be able to do with our calendar and with time, and we're looking at creative ways to try to bring in revenue. We're fortunate to have the Bellingham Public Schools Foundation as a partner. We're looking at strategic ways for advertising. And I've always been pretty resistant to this, and Dr. Cass, I have history with this. Like the extreme example is it's no longer Bellingham High School, it's Coca-Cola High School, right? Like we're not going to do that. But there are some nuances that we're more open to now than before. An example would be at a basketball game when you have the big monitor with the score. It's a digital. We could sell advertising during a game. It goes away when the game's over. It brings in a little money. So some things like that. But it will take this community supporting levies and bonds and continuing to support us locally for us to get through this. So I'm going to go the last couple minutes here on some federal piece, and then we're going to open up for questions. So the last few weeks, my life has probably been similar to many, where it's every day is a new adventure. And as I said at the beginning, what I've been trying to do personally and as the leader of the organization is to keep the organization focused on our kids and the core of our work, but to be very aware of what's going on, and then we'll strategically adjust. But don't overreact, because if you get into that, your head starts spinning and you can't do your job. So each one of these has a little bit of a story. I'll just mention a couple. The first that came through, which is actually the fourth bullet here, was a couple Mondays ago when it was like all federal funding is frozen, grants. It's like, oh boy. For us, that's $10 million a year is we get through federal. The main three bots of money that come through are Title I dollars that support based on your free and reduced lunch rate. That, for the most part, pays for staff. A second one is IDEA, or special education. Again, that mainly supports staff supporting kids. The third one is our free and reduced, our meal program is federally funded. So those are the top three. But if so, at a moment in time, we're like, oh, we could lose $10 million a year. That'd be devastating. But as we keep going week by week, we'll see what that actually means. The second one, their Department of Ed. Short version is this. If at the end of the day the money still flows to districts and it's the bureaucracy that changes or gets rid of or is shrunk or is put to, then that could be okay if the money still flows, because that's what we need is the dollars. If dollars get shrunk, that will be very challenging. So we'll see how much of this change is actually dollars flowing to states and how much of it is about the bureaucracy that runs it, and we'll have to see. I have more confidence than not that the dollars, and this can ebb and flow day by day, but for the most part, I have faith that the dollars aren't going to totally shrink, because those dollars go to all 50 states, they go to red states and blue states, and they go to our kids, our most precious commodity. So I'm kind of most of the time living that in the world of the dollars will still flow, it's just how they might flow might change, but we'll have to see. EDI I mentioned before, it has become politicized. Might we have to change that terminology? Maybe so. Like I said, I got a letter on Friday that is pretty threatening. If all of a sudden we were going to lose $10 million if we kept using that term, might we change the term? Maybe. So I believe in those three words, but the work is more, we can change words and still do the work, is my opinion. Does that make sense? So we'll see where that takes us. The LGBTQ and transgender was called out. I think you get a sense of my values on that. We will continue to stand with our kids, our staff, and our families and support them. And when I sent out my last message on last Friday, and if you haven't read it, go to our website and it's on there, and I think you'll see where we stand with that. The last part, immigration, that one seems like a long time ago. That was a couple weeks ago. We have worked very hard to support our families that are impacted by this and are scared to death. And we have made it very clear what our actions will be. And I'm happy to go farther into that. This is an example of my last two messages that you'd find on our website about both immigration and around the Department of Ed and EDI and stuff. So the last, and then we're going to do questions, is I'm going to close by kind of making the point of, you just went through, thank you for staying this long, like kind of a history of our district for the past decade and a half. And I often get asked, are we making a difference? So I'm just going to show you one lens into that. There's more than one. This is graduation rates of all of our students over the past decade plus. And you can see an upward trend, which is what you want. And then what we've done, this is 5-year graduation rates, is we've taken them down by subgroups. So this is students, low-income families. And what you want to do is not get caught into one year, but look at that orange or red line. That's the trend line. So low-income families. So if you think back at the last hour of our talk, things that we did to help families that are dealing with poverty, is it making a difference? These are students from non-low-income families. So still very positive, but they're graduating at high rates. This is our Hispanic and Latinx students. We have great stories of this work that our family engagement team has done. Black and African American students, the trend line. Students of 2 or more races. Multilingual learners, you speak ELL, is what we would call it before, but are kids that speak another language before English. Students with disabilities. Now this should catch your eye, right? This is some of the lowest numbers we've seen. But remember what I told you about the story of community transitions, and we keep kids enrolled in our district till they're 22 in a robust setting? So let's look at a 7-year graduation rate with kids with disabilities. Because we keep, Students experiencing homelessness. So now, this is the last slide, Michael, I swear to God. So now I'm going to show you all those lines put on one. So this is all students. Here's all the subgroups. And what you want is those trend lines, right, to be up, steeper slope to try to catch up. So if somebody asks if what we're doing is making a difference, that's one data point that I can share. So I'll bring that to a close. Thank you for listening, and let's open up for some questions.
I very rudely put my hands up 5 minutes to Dr. Baker a few minutes ago, because what happened is we have about 15 cards here, and we won't have time to get through them. And Peach is holding up more. Thank you, Peach. But there is a theme to about 9 of them. So what I want to do is just read about 4 of them, because they're all, ICE is the overlying topic, but it's the same question. And then what I'm going to do is, if we don't get to all of these, I'm just going to type them up and send them to you, and we'll figure out a way to disseminate. So here are some of the questions that came in, and they're a little bit repetitious, but the repetition shows how important they are. Okay, so first, how's Bellingham School District supporting children whose families are under threat of detainment and deportation? That's the theme of most of these. How can we help if ICE shows up at a school? So, how do we respond to those in the community who don't support DEI, taking in mind the opposite is conformity, inequity, and exclusion? Have you had trouble with ICE? What is the district's plan? I'll read 1 or 2 more. Now, here's another one. What will you do to protect trans students and teachers from executive orders and other governmental action threatening trans kids if they aren't outed by educators? Okay, last one. There are other topics, but I'm going to just stay with this one for now, because we don't have that much time. Should immigrant refugee children carry proof of legal immigration status when they go to school? If so, are copies acceptable? Does the need to carry immigration paperwork at school vary according to age? So that's a horrendous set of questions, but can you respond for a few minutes as best you can to the breadth of that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Couple pieces. And so one is, we have a set of policies that outline the answers to many of those things in terms of ICE, immigration. We also have a set of state laws that dictate and protect and influence what we can do. So what we've done over the past few weeks is we have pulled out our policies that we already have, the guidance from the state, and we have brought it down to a 2-page or 1-page clarity and ensure that all of our office staff, all of our administrators, and then any other staff that might be involved with immigration officers coming into a school are aware of. So one is really educating our staff of what the rules have been and continue to be. Short version is if an immigration officer comes into our schools, there's protocols. They just can't go anywhere they want. They can go into a public space, or they can go into the office. If they were to do that, our office staff would call the principal and would call our district office staff. We would then engage, and we would probably try to find a place to sit down and talk with them and to find out what the context is and what they're doing. For the most part, they haven't, and they probably won't go into schools. I know I can't speak to the future very well, but I can tell you they haven't, and they can't. They can if they have a proper warrant. There's different types of warrants. Yeah, there's experts in this. So if they have a proper type of warrant, just like with any other law enforcement agency, we would work to help whatever that warrant said. But if it's without that warrant, we would ask them, work with them, but then they would leave. But we haven't had that happen yet. So I've told my team, make sure you know what the protocol is, treat them with respect if they were to come, and don't get into we don't carry weapons, so we're not going to get into it. So that's educating our staff. Our community, and you have this coming up next month with some folks that I know, we have worked hard to educate our families that are impacted with this so they know the rules and they know the laws. For many of them, that's helped diminish anxiety, not eliminate anxiety, as you can imagine, but it has helped. They've heard from immigration lawyers, they've heard from local law enforcement, they've heard from school districts. So with the current rules as we know them, if people can get educated on how it would play out in schools, it can reduce. What we're trying to make sure is that people are educated and that they still send their kids to school. Right? That's one of our biggest worries, is that people get so nervous that they keep their kids at home. So we have a team of folks that work with our families very intimately, high degree of trust, and work one-on-one with families to figure out what are your worries, how can we help answer those questions, how can we make you feel like at least your youngster coming into a school is going to be a safe place. Again, I can't guarantee, obviously, but if you know the current laws, rules, and our state, it can lower that anxiety a little bit. I think the other part was around our LGBT community, especially our trans students. That's a tough time right now. So again, what we can do, and what I did in my letter on Friday, is make it clear what our state law is, what our district policy is. We're going to double down and embrace and love each and every one of our students and their families, and that the school environment will be a place that you feel that. And that we're going to also have adults that will help you process whatever it is you're processing based upon things outside of our environment. And we have incredible staff that do that really well, whether that's counselors, teachers, administrators, because we know our kids really well, and so we talk to them and we help process what their worries might be.
What about trans athletes?
The question was around, so part of what's in the news is around students that are transgender and athletics. You have one view coming out of DC. You have some athletic organizations like NCAA that are adjusting to match maybe what they're hearing. For us, we live in a state right now where we're going to follow state law, and our state law was passed I think like 17, 18 years ago, right before I got here. Has been a very successful framework for students identifying their gender, and that's the sport that they play in. And that's what we'll continue to do as long as I can. And our state law and our policies follow that. You know, and I don't want to, I'm not a politician, and I'm not a legislator, but I often intersect with those worlds. This is one of those times, right? The fear of, so in my world, part of what I get is this fear that a student who identifies as transgender is trying to play girls' sports, and that's harmful to, and like it makes me think like there's this whole group of transgender students all trying to play into the sports and make it unfair. Like, that's so not true. It's just, it's a, I don't know if it's a red herring or a fallacy or it's something. It's not true. We have young people who are transgender, who identify a certain gender, and they can play high school sports in how they identify, and it works just fine. And now I've had somebody say, well, here's an example in another community where that kid was, that student was spotlight put on them and humiliated. You know what I'm saying? And we got to protect them. And I, you know, I don't have a doctorate in this, so I'm learning like everybody else. But when I'm told that, and I've seen videos and I know what they're talking about, instead of protecting that student from the society that's judging them, we don't pull back and not allow that student to be there. We change society. And that's what we're trying to do. And I think some people disagree with that. But that's where I stand. It's like we can give time after time in the history of our country and education where it was because of the color of their skin, the gender, where the same kind of things happened, where you weren't welcome and people looked at you in a certain way. Well, people had to stand up against that, and they can't stand alone, right? They got to have allies. They got to have people standing with them. And that's what I see. So we're going to have this this journey across our country play out as it plays out. Right now, I feel really solid that at least in our district, in our state, we're in a place that is probably as good as it gets around the country. And it's going to take leadership, you know, beyond me to keep moving that forward. So that's all I got to say about that.
So the 15 questions just expanded to about 25, and they're really good questions. And I'm just gonna rudely sort of cut it off now. What I'm gonna do is I will type up all of these questions, get them to Kevin, who will get them onto our Facebook page, our website, so you can see. I will get them to your office, and you can, as possible, not that you have anything else in the world to do, but respond. But all of these questions are really good, but they're across the gamut. And for you, you could probably go an hour and a half on many of them. So I just want to say, I mean, what you heard is a remarkable story of a district dealing with a lot of stuff. And the district, even for those of us without kids in the system, you know this is the time we have to step up and defend what is important. So thank you, Dr. Baker. Thank you to all of you. Okay. So one month from tonight, we'll be having the two immigration lawyers and Kathy Kuba here talking about what we can legally do to support people under refugee and immigrant threats. You take care.